like to call to order the September 8th, 2015 meeting of the Mill Creek Township Supervisors. We'll begin with a pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any public comment on agenda items other than development or rezoning applications? Hearing none, we'll move on to approval of minutes. We have before us the August 25th, 2015 meeting minutes. If there's no additions or corrections, I'll entertain a motion.
I so move.
I'll second.
Mr. Groh?
Yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next, we have approval of bills. We have before us the township bills of 8/26, 9/1, and 9/8 of 2015, and also the sewer revenue fund bills from September 1st of 2015. If there's no additions or corrections, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move we pay the bills.
And I will second.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
Mr. Groh?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next, we have a presentation to the Mill Creek Township Fire Departments. Mr. Groh.
Yes, I'll turn the meeting over to Jason Brendel of the National Flag Foundation. Do I have the company or the organization the right? I'd say National Flag Foundation, and he has a presentation for the Mill Creek Fire Companies. The floor is yours.
Good morning, supervisors. My name is Jason Brendel, and that's my father, Chuck Brendel, right over there. First and foremost, the reason why I'm here is because on September 11th, 2010, my father brought the largest American flag to downtown Erie. Then something happened that day is the reason why we're here. And my father will explain why 5 years later, we at the National Flag Foundation from the Erie County chapter are presenting to the Mill Creek Fire Department the Patriot Award. My father will go more to the reason why we are presenting the Mill Creek Fire Department with the Patriot Award. Basically, this award states that for 5 years, Mill Creek Fire Department has stood up with us and to help hoist the Tri-State's largest American flag. Countless times we asked, would you like to help? And they said yes. But in the past year, we were at War on the Shore and we were marching down 12th Street for the 4th of July parade. And countless times, the Mill Creek Fire Department has stood up and said yes. And so on the 5th anniversary of helping us, my father is a decorated war veteran. He served in Vietnam, and 15 years ago, Erie County Council asked my father to join the committee to make the Erie County flag. So my father did that. And with a few guidance from military personnel in Erie County Council, they were going to purchase this huge flag. But of course, September 11th happened. So I'd like to introduce my father, Chuck Brendel, the co-director of the Erie County Chapter of the National Flag Foundation, to explain why we have the largest flag, what the Patriot Award is, and to honor these people that serve our community every day. Go ahead, Dad.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
How I got involved in it is that I was on the Erie County never had a flag itself. And I was on the design committee for Erie County to have the flag that they have now. I was introduced to Colonel Tibbetts of the Air Force ROTC, McDowell, and myself, Sue Weber, and Robert J.P., who designed the Erie County flag. That's how I got involved in it. And then came on board that we had a kiosk in Fairview Township, that they have a 96-foot flagpole. During 9/11, we weren't allowed to hoist a 110-foot flagpole because of the FAA rules that govern anything over 100 feet has to have a warning beacon light on it. And during 9/11, we weren't allowed, and according to the USC flag code, you're forbidden to mount any warning device or political thing or anything about the American flag. So we ended up with a 92-foot flagpole, which is out there now. So I was granted custodianship of the flag that is supposed to be flying out there right now, which is 30 by 60 foot. The National Flag Foundation gave me permission to use it as a float flag and flag education and that there. So that's just how it became that the Montgomery Fire Department uses it on the
I think so.
September 11th. So I have 2 plaques that I'm going to present to Westlake and Westridge Fire Department on behalf of the National Flag Foundation. It's called the Patriotic Spirit Award, and I would like to present that if I can.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Cool. We have representatives from the 2 fire departments. If you could please come up here
How about we have
for
them
the
all come up?
presentation.
Can we have them all come up?
Why don't you all come up, as a
Yeah.
matter of fact.
Yeah, they've all been invited, so let's all come up.
Come on up front here. We'll do
Yeah,
it.
we'll have all the fire departments and MPS, please.
I'm going to turn my Jackson.
Towards the camera.
Towards the
Towards the camera. Towards the camera there, yeah.
I have this award, these 2 awards. I want to present. This is what the award looks like. Okay. I have one for the senior organization first, and then the junior organization second. Okay. The flag that says Patriotic Spirit Award presented to Westlake Fire Department, this one is Westridge Fire Department, from the National Flag Foundation for displaying our U.S. flag in memory of all who have lost their lives and honoring those who served that day of 9/11. The armed forces, the fire department personnel, first responders, thank you, and God we trust. 9/11/2015. I would like to present this to Westlake Fire Department. And then I would like to present this to Westlake Fire Department. Thank you. Thank you. And on behalf of the National Flag Foundation, I would like to present 2 American flags. I will ask you 3 questions. You will answer, I will. Will you properly display this flag and honor this flag? Say I will. Okay. Will you render it useless whenever it is time to be disposed of? And will you accept this flag on behalf of the National Flag Foundation? 10 questions. Okay. Will you respect and honor this flag? I will. Will you dispose of it in a proper manner? I will. Will you accept this flag on behalf of the National Flag Foundation? I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For all military, but these 2 organizations, these 2 fire departments have stepped up. You know, like I said, on September 11, 2010, my dad got a phone call from one of these fire departments. Says, "Do we do this at the Peninsula?" At that time, I was in Boston, and the dad called me and said, "Yeah, you got in the downtown area, and Mill Creek stood up." So, thank you so much. We look forward to displaying her.
What were you doing it again?
You're going to handle that change order, you want to give it to Rick? Okay. Change order for Rick. Okay.
I'll do the trees and the parks and rec.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you,
you very
gentlemen,
much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Jason. And I do have a question. I understand that there's going to be a display this Friday. Did I hear that right? 12th and Peninsula, what time?
5:30.
5:30, so for the viewing audience,
5:30, goes up 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, it'll be hoisted in the air at the former Tracy School property, northwest corner. Righto. Okay, so it's a really moving experience. Come on out and see it, folks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Next, we have announcement of bids and quotations received. This would be for tree removal. Brian?
And we have 3 locations. The first is for 1102 Clifton. We received a quote from J. Thomas Tree Service of $2,395. Dibble Tree Service, $1,900. And Asplin did not supply or offer a response. So I would move that Dibble do that work for $1,900.
I'll second that.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
Mr. Grow?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Second one is for, there's no location. It just says removal of, tree removal and landing. Is it on the back?
Where?
I'm sorry, 1029 Clifton. It's on the back. Got it. First is for J. Thomas Tree Service for $595. Dibble, $1,000, and Hazlitt did not offer a quote, so I'd move that J. Thomas do that work.
I'll second that.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
Mr. Grow?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
And the last one is for 3 trees on Oakdale Parkway. J. Thomas, $2,215. Dibble, $1,700. And Asplin did not offer a price. And I would move that Dibble do that work.
Okay, and I'll second that bid.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
Mr. Grow?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
That's it.
Okay, next we have the CDBG Sidewalk Accessibility Alterations Project, Phase 3. It's a change order request. Mr. Morris?
The original contract was awarded Amendola Development Company on May 26th of 2015, the amount of $159,591. Since that time, there were 14 ramps that were added, and they included a lot of additional work. It included the installation of detectable warning devices, asphalt transitions, back curbs, and sidewalk removal and replacement. All of this work is covered under Community Development Block Grant funding, and the additional work under change order number 1 is $22,944, which increases the original contract amount to $182,535. We recommend that the board approve this additional work under change order number 1.
Okay, is there any questions from the board?
No.
I'll move approval of the change order request.
Okay, I'll second that.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
Mr. Grow?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next is a streetlight installation request for Whispering Woods Phase 7A. This comes from Gail Jarris, our streetlight administrator. John?
Yeah, we have a request from Paul Luciano, a developer, president of Special Properties Incorporated, Whispering Woods Phase 7A, to install 6 100-watt high-pressure sodium lights on fabricated poles on Mystic Ridge, which is in that subdivision there. And that's per the drawing that we have attached with it there. So that's what they're looking for. I will move that this request be approved.
I'll second it.
Mr. Grow?
Yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next is stormwater maintenance agreement requests. The first is from John P. Abate, developer. Mr. Morris?
Everything has been completed on the township approved form, and the developer will own and maintain the system, so we recommend approval of the stormwater management maintenance agreement.
Is there any questions from the board?
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
Mr. Grow?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next is Mikhail Koshent. Help me here.
Koloshenko?
Kolashenko? Mikhail
pretty close.
Kolashenko?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Once again, everything is on the township approved form, and the homeowner in this case will own and maintain the stormwater management facilities, so we recommend approval.
Any questions from the board?
I'll move approval.
I'll second that.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
Mr. Grow?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next, we have sidewalk deferral agreement requests. We have 3 of them. The first is Connie Day J. Schwartzfield, 5107 West Street. Mr. Morris?
There are no sidewalks in the area, therefore we recommend approval of the sidewalk deferral agreement.
Okay, I'll move approval for that.
I'll second it.
Mr. Groh?
Yes?
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next is for Abate Realty, 2011 Irrevocable Trust, 730 Powell Avenue. Mr. Morris.
Once again, there are no sidewalks in the area, so we recommend approval of the sidewalk deferral agreement.
Okay, I'll move for approval of that request, too.
I'll second.
Mr. Groh?
Yes?
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes. And last is for Mikhail and Yelena Koloshenko, New Perry Highway, State Route 0197. Mr. Morris.
Yeah, this has frontage on Route 97, but the access is from Schultz Road. There are no sidewalks in either location. We recommend approval of the sidewalk deferral agreement.
Okay, I'll move approval for that deferral request.
I'll second.
Mr. Groh?
Yes?
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes. If Mikhail or Yelena are here, I'm sorry for the butchering that I did to your name, but... Okay. All right, next is municipal right-of-way and pole use agreement. We have a short presentation that is going to be given by Bob Ritter of Crown Castle, USA Incorporated.
Bob Ritter, Government Relations Counsel with Crown Castle, and colleague Will will actually start our presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, supervisors, for this opportunity to come and speak with you. As Bob said, my name is Paul Gilbert. I'm a Government Relations Manager with Crown Castle. We are a wireless network builder. We're here today to talk to you about increasing our investment in Mill Creek Township and the wireless network here and in the greater Erie area. We, Crown Castle, are a public utility. We have several nodes already up in the township, boosting the network. We're coming to you today with a proposal for six additional installations to boost that network. But we're really here today because of the demand for wireless networks and the need for them to be robust. Something like 70% of 911 calls are now made via wireless phones. So the emergency network needs to be robust, needs to be able to handle those additional calls. 40% of homes don't have a landline anymore. My house is one of them. I haven't had one for many years. And the expectations are that the demand for the mobile network is just going to keep growing and growing. By the way, I'm flipping through the slideshow, which is on the left side of your handout there. So people now have even more than one mobile device, mobile connected device, and they're all just eating up data. And the carriers need to provide more and more capacity for those users. We, Crown Castle, build what we call an all of the above strategy. So we have traditional towers, we have rooftop installations. Bob and I are part of the company called the Small Cell Networks. So we build smaller, very focused installations to relieve the congestion and serve a need in that immediate area. There's a benefit to the overall network though, as congestion is alleviated in that immediate area. That allows a larger area, the larger network to function better. We, Crown Castle, are a neutral host provider, which means we build with one anchor tenant. So our installation in Mill Creek would have an anchor tenant, but it's expandable to the other carriers, and we provide access to the carriers equally. So we have a reach of about 40,000 towers across the country. But we're growing the side of our business, which builds these small cells. We have 13,000 or so small cells across the network now, and are all built on a fiber optic cable backbone. And we're actually here today with Matt Wordle from So Crown Castle, we have a lot of different regional offices, but Bob and I are actually out of the Canonsburg, Pennsylvania office. So we're pretty close here, and we have an existing network in Erie and Mill Creek, so we have a local presence here as well. So I kind of like to flip to slide 12 in your handout, because this, I think, demonstrates the best what we're really trying to do here. And that is address the issue of wireless network congestion. So on this slide, you've got several people that have signal, and then the people in the red are, because of the demand on the network, their phones aren't functioning, they're not downloading the data that they want. And that's being served by just the macro, traditional, what we call macro site, the tower there. So by supplementing the network with a small cell or a rooftop installation, we're adding that extra bandwidth so that everybody can use their phones. And that's sort of the general concept of what we're proposing here. So Bob's going to talk specifically about what and where we're proposing this build in Mill Creek. So I'm going to turn it over to him.
Thank you. And look at slide 13 in the presentation. As Paul mentioned, we have been in development and construction for about a year and a half on a rather large network across Erie, a total of 36 nodes. Most of these are up and running at this point. This has been a very successful partnership. We've worked closely with the City of Erie, with PennDOT, we've worked with the Township, and we've worked with Mr. Morris on a number of installations. So the few spots marked in that map on green are 6 remaining installations. And what makes these different is that all these other areas are served by overhead utilities. So that's made it relatively easy to install. Our equipment is utility scale, like the other utilities. So we've installed on a combination of existing utility poles. We work with Verizon, we work with Penelec, have agreements with them. In some cases where those poles have not been available, usually because of congestion of equipment already on them, we've set new utility poles. But the areas left are areas with underground utilities. And that is, I'm sure, a concern of yours as ours. We don't want to place new wood utility poles in those areas. They're underground utilities for a reason. The township or the residents have chosen to make those underground utility areas. So what we're proposing to the township is a replacement of existing Penelec streetlights that are in those areas. This is a well-used technology. These would be the first installations of this type in Erie, but we've used similar installations across the country. We're in Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Columbus with these kind of installations. Very favorable results, very favorable public impression. This also fits the objectives of the township in the new right-of-way ordinance that you all adopted in April. There is a desire in that ordinance that small cell facilities like this in the right-of-way shall be located or co-located on existing poles, such as existing utility or light poles. That's exactly what we're proposing to do. There is also an objective the equipment be treated to match the pole in order to minimize aesthetic impact. That's exactly what we're proposing to do here. So the 6 locations, we do have some photos in here. Right now they are a hodgepodge of different streetlight types. As I'm sure you're all aware, they're not necessarily that well maintained at this point. I know there's been some resident concern about that. We've been, in the course of our folks doing surveys, I know we've gotten calls from residents asking, oh gee, does that mean you're going to replace these streetlights with something new? So what we're proposing for these 6 locations is a new design, and there's a drawing on this on page 19. Basically just a clean, simple street light that would incorporate all of our equipment. The 2 additions, there's an equipment cabinet on the side and antenna on the top. Everything is internal, all the wiring would be internal, there'd be nothing exposed. They'd be painted a single color, usually black, but we can do whatever color decide would fit best with the neighborhood. We feel with the different pole types, something this simple and clean would fit well within the neighborhood. So really, what we're looking for is to work with the township on this through the process. We have met extensively with Penelec and really with First Energy at a corporate level and worked this out. I know at the very beginning of this process, we did meet, obviously not a public meeting with everybody, but met with Supervisor Grote quite a while back, and there was some concern about not having Penelec on board. We absolutely have Penelec on board with this process now. We have discussed this and worked this out at a corporate level with their joint use folks and with their engineering standards folks. And we agreed this would be the best process because these lights are non-standard and because there are so many different types. We agreed together that trying to maintain those would be difficult because obviously Penelec has standards for a reason. They have lots and lots of poles they need to maintain the same way. So we agreed together that working through decommissioning and replacement with a new crown-built structure would be the best way to go. They are on board with that. So the process would be the township, as the actual streetlight customer, would have to request that of Penelec. We would work together. There are fees involved with removing the light and the useful life of the light pole, if any, but honestly, I can't believe there are on these light poles. Crown would pay or reimburse all that, so there'd be no cost to the township. Once we put up that new light, we would give ownership of that pole to the township. So from a resident perspective, these residents would get a brand new light pole in areas where I know there's been complaints with the upkeep of the current poles. Crown would be providing that streetlight service. We'd be providing the power to that service. We'd put in a light fixture of the township's choosing. If there's any interest in upgrading to LED from the high pressure sodium, definitely something we could do. So for those residents at that street light who pay that bill would go away. They wouldn't have to pay for street lights anymore. They would now get that for free. We're also proposing for the opportunity to be in the right of way and place these lights, $500 a year that we would pay per location to the township. Obviously, as we've talked about, the residents in these areas would get the benefit of much enhanced wireless network capacity, which is important for their public safety, for their home values. As we mentioned, we are partnering with Velocity on this build, and Crown chose to work with them because of their local presence and the investment they're already making in the community. Again, this is the way we're trying to work and be as unobtrusive as possible. We want to avoid multiple utilities come through tearing up the same street again and again to replace competing fiber. By working together, we can minimize disruption in the township, and also this will the opportunity to bring the fiber to the home benefit to these communities as well. Crown, through working with Velocity, is anchoring that build, so it's another advantage to the residents. They'll have the opportunity to sign up for that service. So we feel this is a real win for the community. I know I've been around talking to various folks at various times about this. Mr. Adair and I have gone back and forth a little bit on the agreement, and I know the biggest concern raised, which is a very valid concern, is what happens if this agreement terminates to the streetlights. We can definitely address that. I mean, first, Crown Castle is a large and stable company. We are the biggest operator of wireless infrastructure in the country. We're a publicly traded company with about a $20 billion market capitalization, I think. We fully don't intend to go anywhere. You know, this is not a startup where we're building this to flip to somebody else. We talk about ourselves as the last owner of these assets. So signing up to a long-term agreement, we expect to be the ones honoring that agreement, but it's a very valid concern. What happens if that agreement goes away? And absolutely we can address that. You know, we've communicated back and forth the last couple days, about honoring the agreement. Crown would be willing to put up a removal bond or replacement bond, whatever it would take at the end of the term to make sure that that cost is covered. The township would have the opportunity either of taking over operation of those streetlights, which we have ownership of. There is a tariff service Penelec provides where they will provide just the power to somebody else's streetlight and have a local company maintain those. Alternatively, the township could remove those, have Penelec set a new pole, and basically just go back to the status quo and make those a township light pole again. So absolutely we can work through and address that concern. And I think, you want to talk about the velocity piece as well? That would be good.
Matt Hotel, I'm Director of Sales and Marketing for Velocity Network. I know you guys probably know who we are from the meetings we've been involved in. Crown Castle approached us about a year and a half ago, since we have the largest fiber network in the region, to work with them on this project. They've been a phenomenal partner. We've turned up, as Bob had said, over 30 locations, not only in Mill Creek, but in the city of Erie and surrounding townships. This area that they're talking about, the Timber Ridge neighborhood, is a neighborhood that we would not have normally built fiber to the home into, just because it is underground and it is more expensive to run that fiber into that neighborhood. However, because of Crown Castle's investment and the small cell technology and coming to us, we've worked on a plan that will be able to do fiber to the home in that neighborhood that currently is only served by Verizon. If you've been up to the neighborhood, they are well-maintained homes, people that have significant demand for high-speed internet and next-generation technology like high-speed 4G cell phone service. I get calls all the time. I actually got a call the other day from a resident that saw us digging up their lawn 6-12 months ago and asked, what's going on? Where's our fiber? And it explained to them that that project's kind of been put on hold until we can work out the arrangement with Crown Castle for the light pole. So very important to us. It's employing additional personnel at Velocity. As Bob had indicated, it's a long-term commitment. Our commitment with Crown Castle is a long-term commitment. So you not only have a local partner and a regional partner working together to advance the needs of Mill Creek Township. And it's only going to go even further, as both Paul and Bob had mentioned. Cell phone service isn't going away. More and more people are getting smartphone. They want more and more data. And what they're doing is basically expanding that capability down to the areas that have weak signal, which unfortunately there are a lot of them. So that's what they're working with us on. So it's a community benefit not only for the township, for the residents, but also to grow a local and regional company. So we hope that you support their efforts, as it will not only support our efforts as well.
Thank you. Just a couple questions.
Sure.
And I don't know if you're able to disclose who your anchor tenant is?
Yes, that's Verizon Wireless.
Okay. What happens, now you want to also entice other vendors, I assume?
Yes.
Okay. When a secondary vendor wants to co-locate on that pole, does that entail another piece of equipment, or do they utilize the actual antenna that is there with your anchor tenant, Verizon? How does that work?
The answer is actually yes. The antenna can be shared. That's a multi-band antenna. So we can support multiple frequencies and multiple carriers on that. There would be a need for additional equipment, and if I go back to whatever page the drawing is on,
19, I think it is.
the antenna at the top has an ability to be shared. We could possibly support a second carrier on that. The equipment within there, and this is that piece is basically a cage, which mainly is a camouflage to give it a cleaner effect. That has radios underneath it. They're about this big. I know it's very technical. Those are specific to a particular frequency and a particular carrier. So adding a second tenant, we would have to add additional radios. At that point, that would be an option that I think we really would work through together and work through with staff. We could add a little bit more equipment and probably extend that cage, or it could go to a separate pole. But I mean, realistically, the physical piece is usually the limitation. We could add multiple carriers on there, but you get to the point where the small cell isn't really small anymore. That's the main limitation. The other issue we find is because these locations are being deployed for capacity, while sometimes there is overlap of specific locations, each carrier has a different existing macro network of their towers and rooftops. They have different customers. What we find a lot of times is, while there's usually areas of demand, like, we can say with pretty good certainty and based on our data that this is a neighborhood that multiple carriers would have a demand, because Crown, as we mentioned, is in the shared infrastructure business. We wouldn't invest our money if we didn't think there was an opportunity for other carriers. Within those locations, a lot of times they don't have the exact need and exact design. So more likely than not, another carrier probably wouldn't want to go to these exact locations, but in the general area, and we could support that on the fiber network and with our build. And that's also one thing we're looking to do with this agreement is this would put a master agreement and a template in process, so that we could together add additional locations over time. Having an agreement in place then could be pretty simple to update, and we believe that would be a good thing, because that would mean more service for more carriers across the community. And once we've come up with a good solution, we think that could be pretty easily replicated.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I just had one.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I had a comment. When you mentioned earlier about, actually it was on your 22nd slide, about installing the new poles will relieve the existing residents of the cost of, and I think that you said of maintenance and the recurring costs associated with the poles. It would just be that one pole, though, correct?
Yes, for each location we would replace, there'd no longer be a street light those residents would be assessed for.
Coincidentally, at today's meeting, we approved a streetlight district, and that would be for a number of poles, and that's how people get billed on all the poles in their neighborhood. In this case, you would just be, if there's 10 poles, now there would only be 9 that you're paying for. Correct?
Okay, well, I misunderstood that from talking with Fourth Rick and Gail. I thought those residents individually were billed in each.
You are billed by your front footage, but the district would include all the poles in that district.
Yes, so anybody who was paying for that light proportionally, that would be
Correct.
reduced because they have one less light.
All right.
They'd be paying.
Just so there's no misunderstandings that
Right.
if there's suddenly a pole in their neighborhood that you're using, it doesn't make their streetlight bills go away.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's the case in this.
Okay. Yeah, just for clarification, and I think for the audience to know here, you're not asking for us to do any action right now. You're just making a presentation to us, right?
Correct. I know that that you as a board are not ready to vote at this point, but wanted to come and present and let you all know what we're doing.
Okay.
We think the benefits, and hopefully we'd like to move forward, and we'll like to keep working with Mr. Morris and Mr. Adair and get to a final agreement fairly quickly that we'll take action on.
Well, hopefully that could occur. I would, of course, it will be an open public meeting, and hopefully we would get some comment from the public. One of the things that I have a question about, I'm looking at page 19 of the presentation. And by the way, this is just for the record here, you have it noted this is proprietary and confidential, and it makes it kind of difficult for us to talk about things that are proprietary and confidential.
I'm sorry,
It's,
I'm sorry, I'm mistaken.
we have the press out here that may be asking us for this information. So,
I apologize. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. This is in the public record if we need to.
okay, I just want to clarify that.
Sorry,
Now,
it was on my template.
okay, no problem, as long as we got an
Too quick to
explanation.
get out of the office on Friday.
Okay. Looking at that pole that you have illustrated, I don't see any dimensions on there as far as the height of it. The only thing on there looks like the height of the meter, center of the meter base, which is what is supposed to be per Penelec regulation.
Yes.
The height of that pole, and of course the light arm on that is midway. I'm going to take a guess that that light pole is probably 25 to 35 feet.
Yes.
Plus the height of that.
We are looking, we would probably be overall at about 32 feet, because we are looking at the center of that antenna being at 30 feet, and with the exception of one fiberglass pole identified, all the existing street lights are in the 20, I think about 25 feet.
Okay.
Right now, the light itself, we would look to set it at the same level as the current light.
Okay, yeah, so you wouldn't have one real high, real low.
Defer
I understand
to,
that.
to your lighting needs, but that could be wherever.
Well,
What about the, I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
just one final comment request. Should that time come where we start talking more about this, would you be willing to put up one of these as a demonstrator so people can see what they look like? Because here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
We're going to get the complaints. We're going to get the comments from the public, and I think they need to know up front. Now, there's a trade-off here, folks. I mean, we're all big people here. You want cellular service, you want tablets, you want this and that, and yes, I have 2 cell phones. My wife has one, I have one. I have a tablet, which is, that's all from Verizon. We keep on doing this. Somewhere, we have to pay the piper, and this may be one of the ways we end up paying the piper. So I just want people to know what it is, their demand for cellular service. This is what's going to be, so, or could be, not going to be.
We do have very similar streetlights I mentioned installed elsewhere to provide some pictures. We could look at doing an installation. there are obviously logistics we have to work through
Right.
that final location, but yeah, absolutely, we could. explore
Or how
that.
about if we just had locations that people could go see
Locations,
them?
but there are none here in Erie, right? Is that
None-
correct?
None like this. We have.
Okay.
The exact same equipment, but it's deployed all on traditional utility poles right now, including, a couple right here in
Right.
26th Street.
Yeah.
What about the fiberglass poles, the ones that are, I'm not sure how tall they are, 15 feet maybe?
Yeah. We do have one of those identified. Yeah, you're right. That's probably going to be the toughest location because that would be an increase in height for that particular pole. We've looked at in designing this network and trying to cover the service objective. That's the best location we identified. That one would be a step up in height.
But with the light itself would be at the same height as all the other lights?
Yeah, we could maintain that light at the same height, so the street light would stay the same.
I'd like to make some comments because I think we can ultimately figure out the height of a particular pole at a particular location when we get to that. But we have some bigger fish to fry. And for the people out there who watch the meetings, we have a regulatory landscape for the benefit of the folks out there. And it does not suggest that if you fill up the room saying you can't do this, that this board can go along and make 100 people happy. The regulatory landscape does not oppose expansion of wireless communications, and the ordinance that we passed does not oppose that. It regulates it, and that's basically what we're talking about. Specifically, what we're trying to deal with involves a third party, and that's Penelec, which does what Penelec wants to do when Penelec wants to do it. And when we talk of decommissioning a pole, you're really changing the status of that street lighting pole. Right now you have a street light pole that perhaps the developer of your subdivision paid for to get it installed. And Penelec bills the township every year for the power and the maintenance, and I'll put maintenance in quotes because Penelec is not the greatest maintainer. And Mill Creek then bills the people who are benefiting from streetlights based on their front footage. So Mill Creek's just a pass-through. Mill Creek doesn't make a dime on this process and spends administrative time to do it. But Penelec has its rules, and one of the Penelec's rules is it has to be a Penelec-approved pole. Penelec has to install it. Penelec has to install all the wiring, and you make do of it as you wish. What Crown Castle's asking, because in its own dealings with Penelec, and it can only go so far, is it wants to replace existing public street lighting poles for which Penelec is responsible with privately owned poles for which Crown Castle would be responsible. Now, in the short term, under what's proposed, that would be a small benefit to people in the district because they would pay a little bit less because they would not be paying for the power. And you didn't use the word maintenance, and you should include maintenance in future discussions. There wouldn't be an assessment per se of power and maintenance for the private pole. And it might be one of 9, or it might be the only one. It just depends. But there comes a time, and even the specimen agreement you have is for, let's say, a 15-year term and 3 5-year renewals, or a 10-year term and 5 renewals. By my calculations, that's 25 or 30 years, and the agreement ends. And we all, by now, should know that technology can change dramatically. So our concern is there could be a time when that pole isn't going to be maintained by Crown Castle, and what to do. And under today's rules of Penelec, you've now got a privately owned pole. You can't just push a switch and make it a publicly owned pole. You have to have Penelec remove it. You have to have Penelec remove the wiring. You have to have Penelec install all new pole and wiring. So all that upfront and back out costs are going to be paid by somebody. And we deal here at the township with something called financial security to deal with a required improvement or a what if. And this would be a what if situation in which at some point in time Crown Castle would no longer be responsible for the power and maintenance of the pole. And the thing is, we know for a fact that if that happens, under today's economy, it's going to be somewhere between probably $3,000 and $3,500 to remove the wiring, install the pole. And that number is just ephemeral going forward. So we've been talking about how do we deal with that? Because otherwise, the people who've benefited in the short term by not having to pay so much are going to be looking at a bill for $3,500. And we're trying to protect against that. So that's what we're talking about in a big picture term. From area to area, we have to be open to the fact that topography and a whole lot of other factors are going to prompt Crown Castle or another carrier of that sort to say, we need this, we need that. We have to be open to that. We have to be open to polls that maybe I wouldn't pick, but maybe they work. But in the big picture sense, folks, we can't just say no. We have to be open, but we're trying to look out for the best interests of the residents because it doesn't always play out forever that Crown Castle is going to keep providing the power. And that's the real concern at this point.
Any other questions? Well, Mr. Ritter, thank you for your time. You know, we look forward to continued negotiations with you and some rectification of this whole thing. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Moving on, we're going to communications. Mark.
Yes, I'm requesting permission to spend $40 to attend the PSAT's Right to Know seminar in Meadville on September 24th.
Wouldn't you be better off not going?
Better to know what you know. Okay.
I'll move to approve that
I'll
request.
second it.
Public comment? Mr. Groh?
Yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Brian?
Okay, I think we had two here. One is for approval of Bridget Riley as a lifeguard at MIHS at $7.95 per hour, and I'll move approval of that.
I'll second that.
Public comment? Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
Mr. Groh?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
And let's see, I guess that's it, yes. Yeah, it's the same.
No, that's a different
Oh, different one, okay. Go ahead, I'll come back to this one.
Okay, I have a few things from the PD. First, for permission for 2 officers to work traffic control at the annual LifeWorks Erie Flu Shot campaign at the Zemzem Shrine Club on September 16th from 7:30 till 3 p.m. If approved, as we have done in the past, Mill Creek Township will assume the cost of overtime, which will be approximately 15 hours. And I'd move approval.
Okay. I'll second that.
Public comment? Mr. Groh?
Yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next is for permission for Corporal Anthony Shamira to attend the 2015 Northwest Pennsylvania Law Enforcement Conference to be held in Franklin on September 17th from 9 a.m. to 2:30. There is no cost for this training, and Corporal Shamira will attend during his regular working hours. And I'd move approval.
I'll second that.
Public comment? Mr. Groh?
Yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next is for permission to post temporary no parking signs on the west side of Zook Road and the north side of West 38th Street, where those roadways run adjacent to the Zemzem Shrine Club property for the Shrine Club's annual gun raffle on September 19th, 2015. Event coordinator John Hayden possesses the signs from prior years and has again volunteered to put them up on behalf of the township. And I would recommend approval.
Okay. I'll second that.
Public comment? Mr. Groh?
Yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next is for permission for 4 MPD police officers to work traffic control and security for the Northwest Pennsylvania chapter of Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation annual fundraising block on October 11th at 11 a.m. Additionally, we ask that Mill Creek Township Building Maintenance post temporary no parking signs on the north side of West 6th Street from Rainbow Gardens to Peninsula Drive. The walk will travel along this route to the east before turning north onto Route 832. The same route where we walk to the turnaround and complete the event at Rainbow Gardens. If approved, as we have done in the past, Mill Creek Township will assume the cost of overtime, which will be approximately 8.5 hours, and I'd move approval.
I'll second that.
Public comment? Mr. Grow?
Yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next is for permission for the Westlake Fire Department Fire Police to conduct traffic control on Presque Isle State Park at the Perry Monument for a September 11th memorial event, which is scheduled for September 11th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. This comes from Fire Chief Richard Shaw, and his written request for approval is attached. And I'd recommend approval.
I'll second that, too.
Public comment? Mr. Grow?
Yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next is for permission for the Westlake Fire Department Fire Police to conduct traffic control at Presque Isle State Park at the Beach One crossover and the Stull Center crossover for the annual crop walk on September 27th from 12 noon to 5:30 p.m. This comes from Chief Richard Shaw, and the written request, if approved, is attached for signature, and I recommend approval.
I'll second that.
Public comment? Mr. Grow?
Yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next, do you have that extra?
That would be mine right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next, we have one more for fire police. This is a request for approval for the fire police of West Ridge and Westlake Fire Departments to direct traffic on Saturday, September 12th from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. for the Erie Homes for Children and Adult Victory Ride, starting at their location, 4950 West 23rd, continuing west on West Ridge Road. A total of 3 intersections will need traffic, including the West Ridge Road entrance to Wegmans, the West Ridge Road entrance to Walmart, and the intersection of West Ridge and Millfair. All other traffic will be handled by other agencies, and the paperwork request for signature is pending, and I'd move approval.
I'll second that.
Mr. Grow?
Yes.
I'm sorry, public comment? What did I say? Mr. Grow?
Yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
You want to do that Parks and Rec one now?
Yeah.
This is from Ashley Marsteller, our Parks and Rec Director. She would like approval of Chet Moffett as the Westlake Open Gym Supervisor, and that rate would be at $7.65 per hour, and I will move approval of that.
Okay, I'll second that.
Public comment? Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
Mr. Grow?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Continuing on, this is from our emergency management. Matt Exley, he's requesting promulgation of the basic Mill Creek Township Emergency Operations Plan. That's been submitted to us, and we need to approve that. Matt, could you come up briefly and tell the people what this plan is about and who is requiring it?
This is briefly, right?
This is briefly.
Briefly.
Yeah. But stay up there, too.
The emergency operations plan is required to be gone over every 2 years. Our last one was designed in 2008 and has been gone over since then. We basically did a rewrite through PEMA. The Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency has required us to do a rewrite through their new program that they have came out with, and this follows all the rules and the mapping that PEMA provides us for it. So this will be provided. The basic plan is all public information, and it basically describes how the township is going to respond to natural disaster and/or any other kind of disaster that would happen within the township.
And this is legally required for us to maintain a certification for our emergency management, is that correct?
That's correct. Every municipality in the state has to have one.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
No comments, but stay up there when we're done.
Okay, and, all right, I'd move approval of the new PEMA Emergency Management Operations Plan.
Okay, I'll second that.
Public comment? Mr. Grow?
Yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes. One more thing, this is from McDowell Girls Athletic Club. They're requesting that the following streets be closed for the McDowell Homecoming Parade on Friday, September 25th from 5 to 6:30 p.m. Caughey from 27th to 38th Street, Meadow from Caughey to Homestead, Homestead from Meadow to 27th Street, and 27th Street from Homestead to Coggy. And I'd move approval of those street closures on that particular day and time.
I'll second it.
Public comment? Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
Mr. Groh?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That's all I have. John?
Okay, a couple things here. We just talked about the emergency management plan, and here's something that we're very proud of. I have Matt stay up here. The Mill Creek Township Bureau of Fire Prevention has been given the 2014 Life Safety Achievement Award. This is sponsored by Grinnell Mutual and the National Association of State Fire Marshals, Fire Research and Education Foundation. This is an award that's given to communities, their fire departments that have had 0 fatalities from the year before related to any fires. Is that correct there, Matt?
That's correct.
That is correct.
Also the public education.
Public education, and Matt has done an excellent job, not only with emergency management, but also with our fire prevention department and the efforts that he puts out there, and he's just an excellent member of our staff. So this, we have this plaque. I think you'll hang it up in your office or somewhere, but it's for hard work, and I want to congratulate you for doing that, Matt, and on behalf of the township supervisors, keep going.
Thank you.
Sounds great, thank you. And then just one other thing here, I've been in communication with McDowell High School guidance counselors. It looks like we may have another student interested in serving on the board with us as a student ambassador. Hopefully that can happen as soon as 2 weeks for our next meeting, which is 2 weeks from today. So I'll let you know more about it. But you know, for the summertime, we didn't have a student ambassador, obviously so. Hopefully we'll get somebody here by the end of the month. That's all I have. Thank you.
I'm going to come back to I've had one more thing. I'm asking the board's permission and to join me in this, to enter into negotiations with the Erie City Water Authority to assume the billing for the sewers in Mill Creek Township. This comes at the recommendation of our Executive Director of the Sewer Authority, David Sterrett. With the impending sale of the Water Authority, Mr. Sterrett feels it would be cost effective and actually a cost savings to the township as long as the Water Authority is going to, the Erie Water Authority is going to bill for water throughout the township, then it would be more cost effective to also have them bill all our sewers. They currently do this with Harbor Creek Township, and we have had some back and forth communication via emails on a proposed cost and so forth, but I would like to permission to enter into formal negotiations with Erie for the billing of our sewers.
Okay. I do have a question, and this is just for the negotiation portion of it?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not the approval of any sort of
No,
contract?
it's no approval.
Okay, yeah.
All we want to do is start the conversation.
Just start a conversation.
On what it's going to be.
Okay. I'll just make one comment. Hopefully we can have an office here. I think it's something we talked about for sewer and water billing. People can come here to the township buildings, so I just want to come out in record for that. If we're going to do that, that'd be one of the conditions that we can do. So, yeah, I'll make a motion to approve that. Or you made the motion, I'll second.
Yes.
Okay, I'll second that.
Public comment? Mr. Groh?
Yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That's all I have now.
Okay.
Evan?
2 things, and Rick, I'll do the one that you have in front of you. The school district is doing its parking lot land development, and in terms of financial security to ensure the completion of the improvements, we had talked about a restricted escrow account. We have an adopted form. Unfortunately, the bank that the school district uses, my favorite bank, did not want to be a party to it because it apparently does not like making decisions. So we've worked out a 2-party restricted account agreement. A separate account has been set up by the school district in the full amount of the required security, and it will not be touched until all the improvements are set up. And I think it's been set up such that Mill Creek has access to the account and everything to verify that. I would recommend that the board approve that and authorize Mr. Figaski to sign. It's already been signed by the school district.
I'll move approval.
I'll second that.
Public comment? Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
Mr. Groh?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
And the second item involves some litigation where the township's been sued and the carrier has agreed to defend part of the two-pronged litigation. I would recommend that the board retain Attorney Patrick M. Carey of the Marshall Dennehy firm office in Erie. They've stated hourly rates of $200 for partners, $185 for associates, and $100 for paralegals. That's pretty much in keeping with the local municipal rate. I would recommend their retention.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve that.
I'll second it.
Public comment? Mr. Groh?
Yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
That's all I have.
Cheryl? Rick? Citizens to be heard? Hearing none, is there a motion for adjournment?
I'll second it.
We're adjourned at 10:35.
You're watching the Mill Creek Government Channel, powered by WQLN Public Media.